Hi everybody, we're ready to start. When colors sing. So let's look at a few things before we get started with measuring. If you are a measuring person, if you were to separate this from top to bottom, about halfway through is where the top leaf comes down to, so that's a measuring point. If you divide the canvas from left to right, it's also almost comes to the midpoint here. And so those are kind of some hash marks. This bottom leaf down here, if I put my hand at a wide, fingers wide, thumb at the bottom, pinky at the top, I might want to put a hash mark there. So those are a few measuring points for you to kind of look at. Same up here, if I were to put my hand up here, a wide hand, pinky at the top, thumb at the bottom, that's a hash mark about where that bottom leaf will go. So those are some things to look at before we start. We'll keep this off to the side for now. And let's get going. We've got our brushes. I showed you those when we started. If you're getting your pack from Walmart, they have a great cheap brush assortment. You're going to need a wide one just to do some coverage at the top, one with a rounded kind of top to do some blending with. This little 1/2-inch flat top is good for edges, and then our little tiny guy, little round, to do details. Your paint, red, yellow, blue, and a little bit of white, and 2 bits of water, and off we go. So let's take our wide brush to begin with, dip it in the water. You only put your brush in to the bristles. They're the only thing that need to get wet anytime you're using it. Once you put it in there, you always go to your paper towel first before you start mixing, and we are going to, actually we're going to start at the top and just do some yellows in there, some pure yellow to kind of show the light, the sunlight that's coming through these leaves from the back. So let's just put some real bright yellow, just a few spots up here. And it doesn't have to be solid. I just want to have some areas up here that just show that the sunlight is coming through from the back. So I'm just kind of lightly putting some right along the borders there. And this is the purest yellow that's coming through from the back. Anytime you go to the edge, I want you to go around the edge. So when you're finished with this painting and you hang it on your wall, it's nice and complete all the way around from top to bottom, side to side. So a little bit over here, it'll go behind this leaf, and you can see I'm not making it really any specific shape. I just want to have some nice bright sunlight coming through from the back. So go ahead and put some just light yellow in, leave some white in between so you can tell that the sunlight's still coming in between those. All right, and now we're going to go to this bottom corner and we're going to mix some very light green. How do you make green? We take our yellow here, and I'm going to go over by the blue, set my yellow down, and then just the tiniest bit of blue I'm going to add in there because I want to start out with a really nice light yellowish green. So you can see that's what I'm getting here on my palette, which is a paper plate. And I'm just going to start in this bottom corner and start covering from the bottom right here and move up. So I'm going to start with some pretty good coverage. Again, when I come to the edge, I want to go around the edge, and I'm just going to, anytime it's hard to spread the paint, get a little more water in your brush, and you'll see that we're going to go from real dense coverage down here in the corner to lighter as we go. Like if you were to take a line almost from the bottom here over to this corner, I want it to fade out from really intense coverage here to almost white. So as I continue to go, I'm going to add a little more white to each time I put some more paint on my brush. Okay. And if you're having a hard time spreading your paint, you may not have enough water in your brush. If it's kind of watery and not wanting to stay on the canvas, you might have too much water on your brush, and then you need to just tap some off on your paper towel. So I'm just getting a nice light kind of yellowish green is what I'm shooting for here. And I want that to just get lighter and lighter as I go towards the center. But I'm working with a diagonal kind of line here. And what we're mimicking in this bottom corner is kind of the foliage that might be further back behind these leaves. And the effect that we're looking for is just those real soft circles of light and color that kind of are out of focus in the background. And if you're a photographer or you've ever noticed that in photographs when you're working with depth of field, the further things, like if you want something to be really in focus up front, then you change your depth of field to be highly focused on what's in front and then blur out what's back behind. And the effect of these cool little circles of blended light is called bokeh. And that's what we're trying to mimic here today with our painting. So I'm still just blending out. You want a pretty light covering of paint, so don't get big chunky blobs of paint on here, because we want this to dry fast enough that we can go right back in here and start working over the top of it. So I just don't want a hard line at the edge here. I want this to nicely fade out into the white. So as you can see, my goal to start here is really just making sure that I'm covering the white of the canvas. I don't want that to show through. So again, when I come to the side, I want to go around the edges with whatever my color is. Finish that. And then down here, I'm going to finish the bottom when we're completely done, so I don't have to pick this up and make it go out of focus here. But if you would like to pick your painting up and turn it sideways, you can finish out your bottom. Okay. Okay, so let's really, when you get pigment on your brush, you can just kind of keep going back and forth until it comes out naturally on its own and fades out kind of same, you get the same effect. All right, a little bit on this side, there would be a little more, like we just want it to look like the really brightest light source is coming about right here. So there can be little bits of color all around, but for the most part, we want it just to be blended out to nothing. So you can add some white to your brush as you get up here further and keep cleaning your brush out if you've got too much on there. Just be sure you leave this area right here, the color of the canvas. Okay, so what we're gonna wait for is when we can go back in and touch that and there's nothing on your hand. Oh, I got green from something else, but if I go in here and touch it and there's nothing on my fingers, I want that to be dry before I go back in over the top of it. So what we're gonna do, if you look here again at this painting, is we're going to make this bottom right-hand corner the darkest, as that's kind of down in the foliage, maybe denser foliage in the trees. So just a little bit of dark down here, a little bit of dark on this side, and then we're gonna go in and just keep lightening with circles as we go out and out. So I want you to make them different sizes, big ones, smaller ones, lighter ones over the top. And the point is to make it all kind of blended. Okay, we don't really want any hard edge circles in here. So you're gonna draw your circle and then just keep going out and out from it until it blends into a nice soft edge. Okay, so let's get a darker green. And how do we do that? Well, first we mix green, which is our yellow and our blue, and equal parts, basically. We want it to be a decent dark green. And yellow and blue will make green, but if you want to darken it even more, add a little more blue to start with, so you make it a darker. But if you want to make it a little more earth tone green, which is what I'm shooting for, then a tiny bit of red. Isn't that crazy? Anytime you want to make a color darker, you add its complement, and the complement of green is red. So that's what I did here, was add a tiny bit of red. Now I'm going to go in down here in this corner and I'm going to start with my dark circles. And again, you want to be sure that your canvas is dry. I'm kind of hurrying this a little bit, so mine isn't quite dry. And if that's the case, it gets a little frustrating because it will just pull the paint off. So I'm going to turn my overhead fan on real quick. Acrylic is a pretty fast drying paint, so it's fairly forgiving, and that's a nice thing about it. It takes 5 to 7 minutes for a new coat to dry. So if yours is not quite dry, you can take your paper plate, oops, don't tear it, and just wave it in front of your painting, or if you have a fan, you might want to turn that on. Ooh, and do not do that. I just splashed the paint because that blue is really, well, the best part about it is if you get it off right away, it's pretty forgiving. We're going to go over that with a leaf, so I'm not too worried about it showing. But if you do happen to get a spot on yours, you can usually take it right off if you grab it right away. And we're going to make green down here, so this will also be okay. So I got my first little white dot. Note to self, do not use your palette if you have sloppy paint on it. All good. All right, so I'm giving it a couple more minutes here. And I'm gonna make sure that my brush doesn't have too much water in it. Get a little more paper towel. This canvas looks really wavy in this, but it's because I have quite a bit of water on there. As they dry, they will tighten, so that's not a problem. Anytime you have a loose canvas like this, you can put a spray bottle on the back of your canvas and then blow dry it, and it will tighten up for you. So I'm getting a little better here. All right, so I'm going to go back in with that green and darken that corner up. Now, remember what I said, I just really don't want any hard edges. So I'm going to go in here with this green and just varying colors of it. I want the darkest ones to be down here in the corner. So there's a couple ways you can do circles. You can turn your brush on an axis and get a fairly decent circle like that, or you can just make a circle like, it's a little bit harder to do with a flat brush, but you can do that also. So you figure out which way you like to draw circles and we'll go from there. So I just want to establish some darker green down here in this corner. And anytime I come to the edge, I'm going around the edge through the whole painting, no matter what we're working on. And I'm just going to keep softening up those edges. It may take a couple coats because sometimes, depending on the brand of paint you're using, it might not be real opaque and it might kind of go on transparent. So not to worry. Just keep working at it, and you can go over with another coat after this one dries, and acrylic's pretty forgiving. So I'm going to go in here, and remember, we kind of want to make them different sizes. You want to overlap them. We're just looking for a blurry montage of all of these circles. So, and we're going to keep it pretty light as it goes out. So I just want the darkest ones down here in the corner. Just establish a little bit of density down here. And again, you may have to go over it, second coat after a little bit. That's okay. So you might have to keep mixing some more. And I'm going to put this on the edge so I can get to that. If you're using an easel, you may want to do the same thing and pull it out to the lip of your easel, so you're not fighting that lip that holds it in place. Try to vary the colors as you stack them. And adding a little bit of white always helps make them a little more opaque. It helps them cover over the top. So I'm going to go in and just kind of get my shapes established to start with. If it gets sticky, add a little more paint or a little more water to your paint. And then maybe I'll put a big one over here. There's no right or wrong to this. Kind of free expression here. So this is the fun part. Just have fun playing with it. Figuring out how you like to draw circles. And you'll get familiar with how much water you need. Got a little fuzz on there. Just kind of keep squinting your eyes. Like you want this to look like blurry light in the background. It's just the suggestion of light dancing around in the background. So that's kind of what we're looking for. They don't have to be perfect circles everywhere. The edges kind of come and go. And then after you've put a couple in, you can go back over the top of them and overlap. You can see I'm just wanting some really soft edges here. So I just keep going around and round until it kind of blurs out to nothing. That's what I'm really shooting for. Some dark ones over here again in the corner. When we have our classes, we usually have music playing for these. It's kind of fun and relaxing just to let the colors fly. Okay, maybe some smaller ones down here at the bottom. We're going to go up the side here a little bit. Add a little white. We don't want to get overly, we don't want to work this too much, so don't get too intense over here on this part of it. We just really want it to be loose and fun and kind of fade into the background because our real focus is going to be on the leaves. So I'm going to just keep working a few up here into the side. Remember, you can overlap some of them, go around your edges. And they really just kind of fade out into nothing as it gets closer to that light source. So make sure that as you go up, your circles are getting lighter and lighter if you're going to carry on up here much further. Have a little bit up into this area, but not too many. We want it to kind of just fade out to nothing the higher up it gets. Okay. So once those have dried, you can kind of go in back over the top of them with lighter edges and just fade, fade, fade out. As long as you can look at this from a distance, and I tell people often, step back from your artwork and look at it from across the room. Like you just want to be sure that there's nothing really that stands out as far as hard edges here. And if you want to use a smaller brush to get some smaller circles, that's fine too. As you can see, my circles are not perfect. They're just kind of suggestions. So I'm going to let that do for now and let it dry. I may come back in later and go back in and soften just a little more over the top. But for now, I'm going to let that rest. Okay, so I'm going to dry. I'm going to wash this off. And as you see, I have 2 water containers. One is for my dirty water. That's where I go first to get the most pigment off. Then I go to my clean water, kind of rub it against the side of the container again, tap off on my paper towel and put it down. I don't like to leave brushes sitting in water. So let's take your little paintbrush now, and we're going to go in, clean water, and let's use the yellow and do some of those measurements. Okay, so we got a little bit of yellow on our paint. Now remember I said from the left-hand side, loose hand, about where my pinky is, I would make a hash mark for where the bottom of that leaf was. From the top, I would do the same thing. So about where my thumb is tells me where this leaf is going to end up. So if you want to put your hand up here, loose, kind of spread fingers down where your thumb is, that's where that's going to be. My halfway point across here, if I visually divide this in half, is about right in the middle here. And top to bottom, halfway. It's about right here. So that tells me where the point is for this other leaf. Okay, so now we can do some sketching. So from this, I'm going to make almost an almond shape. From here, I'm going to use that as my point of the leaf and make a little bit of an almond shape up here. I'm going to end up about 3 fingers from the top here. So if I make a little hash mark, that tells me that's where the leaf is going to end, somewhere up there. Okay, now same over here. And I don't want to make a perfect almond, but I might make just a little bit of a swoop here. I'm just giving myself a map about how to draw this leaf in, okay? So this ends about 2 fingers away from the hash mark I made. 3 fingers in from the corner, make a hash mark, 2 more fingers down, and that's about where my almond shape ends. Okay, now from off of this comes another little offshoot of the leaf here, and it kind of curves in. So we do an upside down C there, and then this swoops around to our hash mark that we made on the side. And this, of course, will go around the edge. So that's that side of it. Now I'm going to do the other side. So from here, I've got this little swoosh here. I'm going to make another little almond point out here. And it's going to go, like if I'm doing my measuring halfway across from left to right, halfway here, I've got another little hash mark there. That's about where I want that edge of that leaf to go. And then another swoop around. So almost another almond shape here. Okay. And then one more up on top. Okay. And I know that my leaf, I want my leaf to end right where I made that hash mark. So I'll just put kind of a simplified bird shape right there. Okay. So that is the first leaf. Now let's go over to this side and do a leaf over here. If I go about 3 fingers from the corner, I'm going to make another little hash mark there. That's where I want that leaf to end, okay? And I want the tip of it, if I come halfway down again, I want the tip of it to go almost, let's say, between this leaf and this leaf, almost halfway down. So I'm just going to make a little point right there. And from this, again, I make my little almond shape. That tells me that's kind of the tip of that leaf. And then another one comes out from it over here. And another one on this side. And we don't, of course, want them all to be exactly the same, but this is giving us a little map of how to draw this. And this one's going to have another one up on top. And maybe a little small one over here. So that's our shape there. Now underneath this, we're going to have one behind here. So I'm going to come where, like from this leaf, I want, I've got my little point here. I'm going to come to the left side of the point and make a little swoop down, 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 up, up, almost like a holly, jagged edges like that. And as you know, there's no 2 leaves that are the same. So there's no right or wrong way to draw these leaves. We're just given a little map here. There's another little part of the leaf that's going to go off there. Okay. And then we've got this one at the bottom here, and it kind of swoops around. We've got our hash mark here, so that's where I know it's going to come down, and then a smiley face underneath it. And that's how we get this one in, and then it goes around the side. Okay, so those are our leaves for the most part. Okay, so you can wash that brush off. And I'm going to get my short 1/2-inch one, just like this, to do my blocking in of colors. And I'm going to start with the bright yellow, okay? So I load my brush with a little bit of water, go get my bright yellow, and I'm going to come around the edges of here. And these leaves are not like pure almond shape. They've got just little jags, and they're not uniform. So I don't want you to come in here like a computer and just make it look like a zipper. Zoo, 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 okay? We're going to do just random kind of jags along the edges here. Okay, and this one tips up, very pointed. Just use your brush to the side to get nice narrow lines. And then we're going to come back down. And again, I'm just using the edge of it as a, to draw with, really. And then I'm going to keep going in and soften that edge up because I don't want to have a hard edge line like that, okay? So I'm just using the edge of my brush and I'm coming around this circle here, and again, I might make a little swoop in. This one curves in. Okay, and maybe I'll make this one just a little bit wider. Again, this is just a map. We can always change things as we go, okay? Same thing over here. I'm going to start with my edge, go right to the tip of the point, and then kind of swoop down here and use the edge of my brush as to draw with. Okay, then go up, same thing on this side. Maybe gets a little fatter here, and then comes down. Again, they're not uniform. We don't have to make them all exactly the same because nature rarely does that with these guys. And you might want to try different leaves if you want to look some up on the internet or get some sources. This is our last little part up here, and it's going to go up over the top. I'm just using my brush to draw my edges in with. Come around, and this is where the stem comes out right here. Okay, so that's my center point. Okay, now let's go to the leaf down here. Same thing, go along that edge, bump it up a little bit so it's not so pretty and perfect. This leaf is curling up, so right now we're seeing the inside of it, and then we'll come back and put the bottom side of it like it's curled up. So just a little bit like that on the top edge to the point. If I'm going too fast, you can always stop this, slow it down, go back and do it. That's the great thing about these online classes. All right, now this leaf is behind this leaf. So we're going to come in here and we're going to paint this pretty much yellow because it's getting more light since it's closer to the light source. And I'm just going to do the same thing. Give myself some jagged edges here. Go along the edge. The ends would be getting the most yellow in them. And then it comes around. Always go around the edge when you come to the edge. I'm going to paint that one all in yellow because it's getting a lot of light from the back and it's behind this other leaf. Okay. Now, last one here. We'll come around to the point here. I just want to establish where this one ends. And same thing on the top. I'm just going around. I want it to kind of have fatter in the middle and then get skinnier on the end. And then I fill it in. Okay, same thing over here. I'm going to make this little center a little more narrow than I have on the others. Just along the edges. You want to keep that yellow all the way down to the middle. Same over here. I'm going to bring the yellow out from the center. Yellow from the center, yellow from the center. Those are kind of where my veins are going to be. Okay, this one comes up. So we're just painting with yellow really to start with. And I want this one to overlap. So I might make this leaf behind a little bit bigger. So it'll go around there. And this one's going to come overlap on top of it when we're finished. Okay, so we're filling all that yellow in there. Might come back over here and just really beef the yellow up at the end of this. Maybe a tiny bit of white just to make it more opaque. If you're having trouble covering the canvas, add a tiny bit of white to your paint. Different paints are received differently on canvas, so some of them might be a little more transparent, and if you're fighting that, just add a little bit of white to it. Okay, so I'm going back and just covering any spots that I see the white shining through. Okay, so we've established where the brightest brights are coming through. Now we're going to go in and work towards the oranges. So to get orange, we take our yellow here and then a teeny tiny bit of red. Red is a powerful pigment. You will see that a little dab will do you. So don't go overboard. We just want to go to barely orange now. Just a little bit of yellow orange, okay? And we're going to come back in here on the edges. We'll show you this one more time so you see what we're painting. See how the ends of the leaves we just did? We want to leave those yellow, 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 and yellow in the background. Now we're going to come in here and add some of the oranges, which are just on the edges and the outside borders of these leaves. So that's what we're working on now. Okay, so I'm going to come in. I've got a little bit of that orange on the edge here, and I'm going to come in real tentatively. I don't want to go overboard this first time, and just see how bright that is. Okay, I might want to go back in and get a little more red, get a little braver, and you will see, like I said, doesn't take much and it gets really red really quick, so don't go too far in the first time. And I'm just putting some, these little straight edge brushes are great to do edges with, as you see here. And I'm going around the edge, like we talked about, blending, blending. Your yellow might still be wet, so you can blend for a little while once you've put it on. So these are gonna be my veins down the middle here, out here, over to this side. Those will be their veins. If you want to very lightly put those in, then you know what you're working towards with your blending, because the leaf patterns and the colors generally blend towards the vein, if you see what I'm doing. Like I'm going from the edge towards the vein on this leaf, and then I'll do the same on each leaf. Okay, so I'm going to keep that red just around the edges. This is where my stem comes out. So I'm going along that edge. And then you see, I'm just going to keep kind of blending, blending, blending till the paint comes out on its own. I don't want any hard edges on that. Okay, now along this bottom edge here, I'm going to come with some more red, and it kind of goes around the corner. And again, I blend towards the vein on that part of the leaf. You can see it's getting a little dry, so I'm going to add a little bit of water there, and it'll help me blend it. If you have the color orange, you can use that. We are just mixing the color orange here. So I'm just kind of blending in beside the vein. And this is pretty transparent color here. So again, if you're having trouble covering the canvas, you might want to just put this one coat down, and then you'll come back in with another coat, and it'll get nice and smooth if it's looking too blotchy to you to start with. Okay, now we'll go to another spot, establish our reds wherever they are around the edge. We're going to come down to this one, right to the point, and just kind of make a wider line, more pressure and around. What I'm shooting for here is to look like this leaf is curled, and we're seeing the bottom side of it. So just a little bit along that bottom edge, and then maybe just a tiny bit along this top edge here, and then it just fades out. And I'm just doing that with the edge of my brush. Okay, same here. We've got one little part of the leaf that comes around, going around my edge. So I just am having the red just on the edges, like it's just starting to turn there. And then maybe a little bit up here. All right, now this one up here, this little leaf is in front, so I'm going to make this really brave here. And it's all the way in front of this other one. Okay. You can see I'm just using the edge of my brush to establish it. And it's kind of opaque, so I'm going to do one coat here, let it dry, and then I'll come back in over the top of it. I want to stay right to the edge here like I established before. That's where the stem's going to come out, so I have vein, 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 vein. You're just basically going from a central point to the end, central point towards the end, central point towards the ends of your each little section of leaf. On the leaf. And same over here. This red is going to get really vibrant down here because this one is going over the top of this leaf. Isn't that cool? Right away it establishes perspective and form, one being in front of the other. My paint's getting a little dry, so I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And while it's still wet, you can kind of go back in and blend. And again, I'm going towards the vein. See how I go from the edge towards the vein on each section of the leaf. Don't worry if it looks a little blotchy to start with. You can come back in with each layer and really kind of smooth things out. So now I went and got some more yellow on here, and that red's pretty powerful. So if you want it out of there, you about have to wash it out because it's going to keep showing back up. So if you want to move back to yellow, more yellow, less red, come back in. And I'm just blending. As I go out from the vein towards the edges. Now I want to be sure that I leave the ends that bright, bright yellow. Don't get in there and start painting over the top of them because we want that to be like where the brightest sunlight is coming through, okay? Just going in, blending, 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 and you'll see each time I'm going from the vein out to the edge on each portion of the leaf. Okay? Get that nice transparent look. Maybe a little bit more on these edges. You can see each layer we add adds a little more form to it. So I've just got the reds on the outside edges. Now I'll come back in here and fill this in a little more. So I want this, I'm going to just use my pretty bright yellow here. I'm just blending over the top of it. If you add a little water, it'll move really nice over the tops of things. Now, if this is still wet, don't be pulling from that, or that'll frustrate you. Go back in with my bright yellow. If you wanted a little more, if you're having trouble covering, add a little white to it. Coming out from the vein to the edges like we did before. I'm just filling in these white spots, going back over, kind of blending it in so you don't see any blotchy edges. want to add a little more red back in here just to define that edge a little bit. I put just a little bit of red on here, and then I can go in along the edge, make it nice and crisp, and then blend it back into the body of the leaf. And again, there's going to be kind of veins that come out. You've seen the veins of a leaf as they come out. So we can do that with just a little bit of color. And then I'm blending back in. Tiny bit of red on your brush. And I'm just putting those veins in really with the color. Go towards the central vein, each one of them does. Might be a little denser back here where the stem comes into it. And I just always point the direction of my stroke to the main vein in that part of the leaf. So these are kind of coming over this way to this vein. Same over here. Might make it a little denser red up at the top there. A little more water on my brush. It's going up and over the top. And you don't want to just make vein, 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 vein. You want to just be pretty random. Like take your brush up, move it away, make it a little more pressure, and then let go. Thinner line, and then it disappears, and then it comes back. So that's really going to look more realistic than actually draw all your lines in. So we're kind of establishing all those just with a little bit of extra color and the veins that come out. So don't overdo the veins. We just a little bit will do you. Just suggest them. Same down here on this one. And we're filling it in again. If you've got some areas that are, remember just to keep those edges. You want to keep some bright yellow on each leaf. Like that's the place the light's coming through the most. And this one is behind, so we want to keep that established. Now, there'd be a few more just suggestions of color back here, that there are leaves behind these other leaves, but we don't want them to be really defined. So you can come back in here with yellows and oranges and just make a few little suggestions of line, but it doesn't actually have to be a full leaf. See how I'm doing that? I'm just kind of coming in here and moving some color around, but it doesn't really have to look like a leaf. Just want it to look like there's, like this is a whole tree that this light is coming through behind here. Watch your edges. If they're still wet on your leaf, you don't want to pull those around too much. Just want to kind of suggest that there's other leaves back here. So a few little spots of color behind. Okay, so all of our leaves should be pretty filled in here. Now we've got those leaves pretty established. Before we put the last falling leaf in, I'm going to come back down here and just rework that one more time and soften up some of my greens while this is drying on top. So I might come back in with this brush. It's a 1-inch filbert, it's called. It's rounded on the top like a nut. And I'm going to come back in with my light greens. Maybe establish the dark one again down there in the corner. Get that so it's not looking like you can still see canvas through it. That's my goal here, is just to make them all look a little more smooth, and so you can't see the canvas from behind it. Remember, we added a tiny bit of red to make that more olive green. That's what I'm looking for down there. I want earth tones to be working with. So I'll go back over those, and you'll see this next time. Make some nice smooth transitions and not so blotchy looking. These rounded edges are a little better for blending than the flat one. Mix enough that you can get in there and get the job done. And again, however you're most comfortable doing your circles, just stick with that. Okay. Remember to go around the edge. If you put a circle right up to the edge, go all the way around the side. Get this one down here in the corner. Get it dark again. Okay, then I might start adding a little white to some of these and maybe some more yellow. I just want to lighten them up. Soft, soft edges. We just want it to look really blended. Next time you notice a photograph or something within this, it's interesting when you take these classes and we start talking about some of these things, then you can't not see them when you go out into nature and photography. And when you start looking at things, you'll know, oh, that's the bokeh effect. And you'll be able to tell people about what you learned. Complementary colors, how you make a color darker by adding its complement, all those things. So I'm squinting my eyes now as I'm doing this, and I'm just wanting to make sure that this is just a nice blurry effect down here in the corner. Overlapping, making smaller ones within the larger ones. Just trying to soften all these edges so there's no real focus on any circle. And step away from your project every once in a while. I always tell people it's good just to walk away from it, come back, maybe take a break, come back and look. Sometimes things look different to you. I always tease my in-person classes. Walk away, go around the room, look at other people's things. When you come back to your painting, you'll either feel really good or really bad. That always makes them laugh. But the point is not to compare ourselves with what other people are doing. Just each person's is going to have its own personality, and that's the best thing. It's one thing that I love about teaching is everyone's paintings look so personal right off the bat. Everybody has such a different interpretation about even what I'm explaining. So it's really cool to see that right off the bat, they all start having their own personalities. So that's really fun to see. Okay, you kind of get the idea what I'm doing here. I'm just really trying to blend till nothing really stands out on its own. I just want soft lines everywhere. And I think we got that going on. Just marbly light. And it gives some energy and some life to this painting, like all that swirling color and just kind of fading out into nothing. That's what we're looking for, and hopefully that's what you're seeing, that it's darker down in that right-hand corner and then fades out as it comes up to the side there. Okay, I'm going to call that good. Quit messing around with it. We'll go back in, put the detail on our leaves, and we are close to finished. Like I said, if we've gone too fast for you, you can always slow it down, go back over, rewind, look at things Listen again. And everyone's is going to look a little different. I love to see what my students are doing, so be glad if you could send us some pictures. We'll put information about where you can send them at the bottom. All right, so we're going to go back in now and just add some of the details. This is what we're shooting for. So we're going to go back in and just put some of those last little bits of the veins in and put this last little leaf in that's falling, like the little last one that decided to fall. So I'm going to go in with my 1/2 inch flat brush. This is one we did use to start with. And I'm going to get yellow, start with yellow again. And anywhere down in here, we're just going to put a real loose, let's call it a spoon, okay? If that were a spoon, like a ladle, real soft S-curve, okay? It goes up to nothing. When you turn your brush on its side, you can almost get skinny as a pencil. And then down here at the bottom, I'm gonna press and turn my brush a little bit and widen that up so it gives it more body to the leaf, okay? Come about halfway up here, make a little edge of a leaf there, and then come back in. And remember, they're kind of jaggedy, so I might grab a little of that orangey color. Put a little scoop up here, come back down, scoop down here. And I want that to be the light yellow. Got a little much paint on there, as you can see. Try to keep your paint thin. And then on this far edge, I'm going to come down here with red and just do a little scoop here like it's curling. And then blend it up to the edge. So you see how that does? Well, we might have to come back when it's dry and beef that up a little more, but you can see that it makes it look like it's curled. We leave it light towards the back and darker towards the front. All right, let's leave that for now. Okay, grab your little teeny tiny brush and we're gonna put some brown in. How do we make brown? Red, yellow, and blue all together. Let's start with the yellow and the red. Will give us orange, and we want kind of a dark orange. So the more red you put in, the darker the orange will be. Don't get it too globby on there because you won't be able to have any control. But once you get that orange mixed, then you go in and grab a tiny bit of blue and you'll get really kind of a natural brown. Add some more red. It almost looks maroon, which is fine. You want to keep it earth toned. And just keep playing with those until you get kind of a natural looking dark, almost dark violet, but it'll look brown when we put it on there, okay? Then once you have some on your brush, go to the edge of your palette and scrape it off so you get a decent point at the end of your tiny little brush. Now, we're going to establish at the end here that that's where the stem comes in, and it usually has a little bit of a round point to it. So depending on how pointy your brush is, if it's got a good point on it, you're going to start from here and go up towards the edge in a rounded kind of edge, and you're going to get lighter and lighter and lighter as it goes away till you just have a real skinny line at the end. And you can have it kind of broken like that. Okay, if you are not getting a good edge with your skinny little brush, then go to this flat brush and see how skinny the edge can be when you turn it on its side. If that works better for you, you can try that also, and I'll show you here how to do that. You load your brush. Make sure you just load it back and forth. Don't get big globby on it. And again, you tap it off on the edge, and that should give you a very thin line that you can then come in here and do a vein. And again, don't give me a solid line. Kind of break the line up very, very light. And it doesn't have to go all the way to the tip. And then from here, we'll also come down to this side. Very, very light, broken line. And then another one branches off from here, goes over to this side. So I'm just going to each edge, or from the main vein over to the edge of where each one of these would be. Sometimes they get brown spots on them. You know how those look. Okay. So I've got it from my stem here. Now I might have a little bit down here on this one. Very light. I don't want to go all the way to the end. Just a couple light little veins coming off with a broken line. Just pick up your brush and then set it down, up and down. Give me broken lines. I don't want solid lines on there, okay? Same down here. This one would kind of come right down the middle and then disappear. Okay, let's do the same over here. We've got this darker area where it comes in, and then I'm going to go up to the side with the side. And I kind of prefer using this flat brush on the edge so you can get a nice thin line with it. And I'll do the same thing. I have it on its edge. I'm going to come down real light, broken line, up, down, set it down, come almost to the edge, and then come in here along some of those lines I made. Just put a few little veins in. You don't want to have too many. We just want to suggest that this is what's happening. Because we don't really see all of it. We just see bits and pieces. Our eye really does a lot for us. Let it do some of the work. We don't have to draw every single thing in. But they would all stem from that main area there, where the stem comes out. That's where your veins will come from. That's what I should have said. Okay. And then our little one down here would have some on the stem. Maybe just along the edge there is all I'll do on that. Maybe just a little detail. Okay. Now I might go back in with this little round brush and just add a few little random spots. You know how those show up, like little dots here and there. And again, don't overdo it. Just a few, like maybe where a vein is that it got a little heavier, or there's more brown. Just a few little random dots here and there, as you would see on the leaves. And guess what? You are finished. You can go back in and add a little pops of color here or there for any extra details you'd like. But for the most part, we have finished this amazing painting. I'm so glad you joined us. I hope you're happy with this. You can hang it in your own home for the holidays, or you can gift it to somebody if you are going to visit them. And we sure are glad you came to see us. Tell your friends about artwithlisa.com, and we'll see you next time.